Hey guys, it's Tori and I am back after a very long hiatus, longer than I originally planned, but my last video, if you saw it, was explaining that I didn't really know what was going to happen. So it is now the end of September, and when you're seeing this, it will be the first day of October. And of course, that means that it is Victober, and of course I had to come back in time to discuss my TBR and hopefully put up at least a few videos throughout the month. So let's get into the discussion of Victober, what I'm planning to read, all of that jazz. If you happen to be watching this and have not heard of Victober, this is a readathon hosted by Kate Howe, Katie from Books and Things, Roz from Scallydandling About the Books, and Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, and it is a readathon that has been going on for many years and I have loved it. The whole idea is that during the month of October you read something that was written in the Victorian era, specifically within the UK, so that would be classified very specifically as a Victorian work. Of course they have prompts and other things that go along with it, but the biggest thing is to read at least something from the Victorian era. So that is 1837 through 1901, and that's some of my favorite literature ever, so I always look forward to this. So I have been feeling a little bit better about my reading. I'm still going a little slower than I usually do, but I am picking up compared to the summer, so that's been really good. So I'm hoping I'll at least be able to read 2 or 3 things, probably 3 things once you see this list. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, I do want to try to read some. I want to post at least a couple of videos throughout the month about Victober. And then there's actually another readathon I may see if I can participate a little bit in, but I will get to that at the end of the video. So I've broken this TBR up into 2 separate parts. So the first part are the books that I really will prioritize reading. 2 of them are very short, which is why earlier I said probably 3. And one of them honestly is not that long either, and it's a little bit, I think, more of a faster pace. It's more of a sensationalist book, so hopefully that means I'll stay engaged with it. And then I have 3 others that I potentially could get to, just depending on how my mood ends up settling later on in the month. So let's kick it off with my priority reads. So like I mentioned earlier, there are a few prompts that go with this readathon, and I did work my TBR around that. So the first one I'm going to briefly mention is Kate Howe's challenge, which is to read a book that has religious discussion throughout it. So being a Victorian work, pretty much all of them are going to have some level of religious discussion in it. So I just feel like any of these will work. I do have one in my lesser priority stack that's a little more religion focused that I'll bring up later, but in general I'm not really super focused on this prompt, so there's that one. Katie from Books and Things prompt is to read a book with some sort of twist on narration. So for this prompt I decided to go with A Group of Noble Dames by Thomas Hardy. This is a short story collection by Thomas Hardy, and it has a frame narrative of a group of people getting together and deciding to tell each other stories about several noble dames that each of them have met in their lives. So it has that narrative framing device, which I think will be very interesting going into this. I'm very curious to see like what inspires them to start having this conversation and start thinking about these stories, and then how that impacts my reading of the stories. It's not very long, thankfully. I mean, it's a little collection of short stories, so granted, even though it's thin, it does have a lot of writing per page. It's kind of a bigger book. This is kind of one of those books that isn't really in print, so I have this copy as like a print-on-demand book, so it's not the prettiest of things, but it will do the job. So I'm hoping this one and the other shorter one I'll be able to read. I have a long weekend that I've scheduled. I always like to do that with work for Victober, not only because of Victober, although that is the main reason, but the other reason is because I work in retail. And so starting in November, Christmas stuff just takes over life and time and thought. And so it's nice to get a little bit of a break right before we go into that crazy time. So anyway, I hope to read this. And then the other one that is shorter that I hope to get to follows Roz's prompt from Scallydandling About the Books. And her prompt is to read a play from the Victorian era. So for this one, I'm going with Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. I have never read anything by George Bernard Shaw, but I think Roz read this last year and really liked it. And the synopsis was very intriguing to me. It's about this woman who goes to college who doesn't really have a relationship with her mother. However, one day her mother does show up and the girl girl comes to find out that her mother has been paying for her daughter's college fees by being a prostitute or owning a brothel. Anyway, either way, she has been doing that in order to help get her daughter to college, and so it just explores the complexities of that and the emotions behind it for the daughter. Like I said, her great things. I did think about doing The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde because that's on my 30 before 30 TBR, but I actually just found out that the Shakespeare Festival I attend every year with my best friend is putting on The Importance of Being Earnest this next year. So I could read it, but I feel like seeing it will be a better way to fulfill that prompt anyway. And like, obviously you can read it before going, but just with my reading mood right now, I think it's just better for me to read something else that I don't know if I'd ever get to see on stage. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. Like I said, I'm really excited about this. Hopefully I will enjoy it. And like I said, I'm going to read this across that long weekend as well, these two shorter ones. So, and then the one full-length novel I have that I am going to prioritize both meets the bonus prompt and Marissa's prompt. So the bonus prompt, let me start with Marissa's prompt. Marissa's prompt is to read something that's been serialized, meaning that in the Victorian period, they released like a chapter or so a week or even a month sometimes, I think, until it was all complete. So it wasn't published like as a full novel to start off with. So I'm pretty sure this one was serialized. And then the bonus prompt is to read something by either Sir Arthur Conan Doyle or Wilkie Collins. So the reason for this is because we've had two beloved booktubers in this corner of booktube with the classics suddenly pass away within the past year. We have Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Her favorite author, Victorian author, was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And then Jennifer Brooks, who passed away earlier this year, and I've mentioned a couple times as she was a particular booktube friend of mine. Her favorite Victorian author was Wilkie Collins. And so I'm going to read something for Jennifer in honor of her, and I have chosen The Law and the Lady by Wilkie Collins. I am pretty sure Jennifer read this. I actually haven't. So since her passing in, I believe it was January, I have not watched a single of her videos because every time I think about seeing her videos, it makes me want to cry a little bit. So I still haven't, but I think I will. I know last year for Victober, I had a few from last Victober that I hadn't quite watched yet, and I know she had a few last year that I didn't see, and one of them was discussing Wilkie Collins, and I think it was like where to start and her favorites and stuff. So I might watch that one in order to remind myself if she's read this and what she thought of it. But I know a lot of other people have liked it. It is the only one on my shelves right now by Wilkie Collins that I haven't read yet. This one follows a woman who marries a man whose previous wife, I believe, died, and she ends up finding herself intrigued to find out what's really going on in this house. It sounds very interesting. It's not terribly long, so it doesn't intimidate me too much as far as getting back into classics and Victorian literature after my hiatus from reading really in general. And I think, yeah, the sensationalist nature of it will keep it fast-paced enough for me to stay intrigued. So hopefully I can at least finish this and then those two shorter ones this month. But like I said, I do have a few lesser priorities that could come up. So if I ended up finishing those books and felt like I did want to read more Victorian literature, I have a couple of novels I might pick up. So the first one is the group read actually, and that is The Doctor's Wife by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. I actually would really like to get to this because before the announcement even went up, I started listening to the audiobook of Madame Bovary, which this book was inspired by, and so I was like, that would be so perfect. I have not finished Madame Bovary, and I still have a little while before I do, so we'll have to see if in the next few days I'm able to get to that and finish it, but we'll see, like I said. But either way, I am considering picking this up. However, I don't know how much I'm totally in the mood for this, especially when I already have kind of a sensationalist novel on this list. So possibly this, but not 100% sure. If I don't read that, the other one I'm more likely to pick up is Romola by George Eliot. So this is the one that I mentioned that fits Kate Howe's prompt, which is to read a book centered around religion. And this one is much more centered around religion, set in the Italian Renaissance, I believe, in Florence during the reign, so to speak, of Savonarola, who was a preacher, a priest that really had a huge impact on Florence. First of all, this is on my 30 30 before 30 TBR, so that's a big thing. But also I have a video on my watch later playlist that has been there for probably like 2 years now, from when Kate Howe and a few other booktubers did a buddy read of this and discussed it, and I was like, oh, when I read Romola, I want to watch that. So it's just been sitting there at the top of the list for all this time waiting for me to actually read this book. So part of me is like, I really would like to just actually get to it so I can watch that video, get it off my watch later, and then also just hopefully read a good book. It's been a while since I've picked up a George Eliot, so I just feel like it might be fun to get back into her stuff and hopefully enjoy it. So yes, those two, that and The Doctor's Wife, are like my two next novel possibilities. The only other book I have is for a possible audiobook if I end up feeling in the mood for an audiobook for Victober. For this, I did decide to go with another 30 before 30 list one that's been really like tickling the back of my mind for so long, like months. I've been wanting to read this. It's just a chunky one, and so I've been intimidated and wanting to focus on some other things. But I feel like if I do start an audiobook for Victober, it's going to be this one, and that is Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens. Of all the Dickens novels that I have not read yet, which is still many, I most have been intrigued recently by this one. It follows a girl who I believe was born into a debtor's prison or when she was born, her father was already in a debtor's prison. I don't totally understand, but she really has to take care of him because obviously he can't go out and work and therefore can't pay off his debts, and so she has to do a lot to keep him alive as well as hopefully work to pay off the debt. I think this is one of Dickens's novels where there's a lot of other characters and subplots, but I've just heard really good things about it and I've just been intrigued. So like I said, not 100% sure, but it will be what I pick up if I want an audiobook. So that is it as far as my TBR. I did want to mention, like I said earlier, I have another readathon I might kind of play a part in. I'm not 100% sure how that will look because I will want to prioritize Victober, at least in the first half of the month. But Becca from Becca and the Books is hosting Spookopalathon, which is a book-inspired Monopoly game where the board has prompts as you go around. And of course, Spookopoly, it's based off of Halloween and things like that. So I think it will be a fun thing to do. And I think a lot of the prompts I could work easily with these books that are on my TBR to make it work. But I also, like I said, I want to prioritize the Victorian books, so if it doesn't quite work, then I may need to do something else. Or maybe I'll just read a completely different Victorian work that I wasn't originally planning on based on the prompts. So we'll see how that goes. I'll probably vlog throughout the month so you can kind of see what I end up doing. I really hope I can get back into BookTube. I just feel like I need it. I need something to make me feel productive. I've been so lazy the past few months. Granted, I did move. I didn't mention that, but I did move. So I reset up my shelves if you're wondering why we're at a different angle and maybe the carpet looks different. Yeah, I ended up moving back to my parents' house again, unfortunately, but it's just what needs to happen right now in my life. My roommate and best friend got married, so happy for her, but it meant that I couldn't afford our lease by myself. So once the lease was up, I was like, I don't really know where to go with the housing crisis that's going on right now and where I'm at with my job and stuff. So yeah, I moved home. I also actually got a promotion. So I did get a little bit of a raise, not a lot, but it's more of a promotion where it puts me in a more promotable spot to where I could get paid more on a salary at some point, depending on what positions open. It's a good training opportunity. So it's really exciting and I'm really liking it. And it's actually, my parents' house is closer than my previous apartment would have been. So that worked out really nicely. But yeah, that's where I'm at now. I don't know how long I'll be here. Hopefully next steps will become clear as time goes on, but I'm just grateful that I have parents in a position where they can take me in and help me out and it doesn't cause too much of a strain on them. Anyway, that's all a big ramble. I'm just glad to be back and to be able to tell you guys about my life and hopefully hear how you guys are doing. I've had a lot of new subscribers and great comments over even the past few months when I haven't been active on here, so welcome if you're new from the past few months. Sorry I kind of was on a hiatus when you joined up, but I'm coming back. And like I said, hopefully it will be in a more regular fashion. I don't know 100% that it will be literally every week, so I'm not gonna make that promise, but I do hope I'm able to increase the amount. I'm not doing my podcast anymore either with my friend. It was my friend that got married. I think we'll revisit it and start up again at some point, but at this point, she's just getting settled into married life, and she may end up moving in the next few months to a little bit further place, which would make it harder. I just found that it was hard to keep up with this and that while also working full-time and being the type of person I'm driven enough to like get things done effectively, but I'm not a super productive person, to be totally honest. Like, my natural state is to just like chill and read or watch a show. So it was just kind of overwhelming. It led to a little bit of burnout, which I think is part of why I left here, because it was just a lot going on and I was already feeling a lot of emotions and stuff about various things just between losses. Both Jennifer and also my grandma passed last year. And then there were a million weddings this season, one of which was my brother's, whose wife now is a wonderful person whose parents have just been treating her really bad through this process. So anyway, it's been a big, crazy year with a lot of good things, a lot of growth for me. Really needed the break, but like I said, I just want to be here. I like talking to you guys and sharing my thoughts on things. So you didn't ask for that ramble, and I even said 2 seconds ago, this is a ramble, I should stop, and then kept going. So let's just end this video here. Let me know down below if you're participating in Victober and what you're most excited to read. If you've read any of the books I mentioned and really think I will like one of them in particular, let me know that as well. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye!